who is this audience that I'm looking for? I need to really well define it, and I need to extract a really good problem out of them. 2 is I need to come up with my solution to address that problem. And then 3, I need to like test it around fast to validate that I'm on the right direction, and then iterate forward until I get to a good business. And so that's basically the startup process in a sense. Problem that most founders face is that because there's so much to do, you end up achieving very little, because you do a little bit of marketing, a little bit of building, a little bit of this, and then in 6 months you have nothing to show for. The good thing is sometimes as an advisor, you can tell people what to do, and then suddenly if you're doing the thing, you're making the exact same mistakes that you're preventing, like warning people about. The first one is just assuming you understand what the problem and the audience is. This is a huge issue that too many founders fall into.
This is literally a show about please ramble.
You should call it like founder rambles, by the way. That could be a really funny, could be a really, because one thing you learn, I don't necessarily put the founder hat right now, but one thing you will learn working with founders is they talk a lot, man. They have so much to talk about when they talk about their businesses. It's a bit complicated.
Good, that's passion. It comes from a place of actually caring about what they do. So you've got a big idea, it's innovative, it's disruptive, and you're pretty sure it's going to be profitable. But what now? Starting a business isn't a video game. There's no singular path to success, and the system doesn't care if you win or lose. So how do you go from a stray shower thought to $1 billion business? Honestly, I have no idea, but someone who absolutely does is Majd Alayli. For over 15 years, Majd has been consulting with over 20 different startups and innovative companies to help get them off the ground and thrive, including Studio Fankoush, his very own Arabic digital content network, which managed to gain a whopping 970,000 monthly active users in just 2 years. So join me as we explore what it takes to make it as a startup in 2025. I'm Dan for AraGeek.com. Majd Alayli, welcome to Founder's Voice.
Thank you, Dan. Awesome to be here.
You're very, very welcome indeed. So, obviously, I know we've just done a brief intro for you, but in your own words, what are you up to right now?
So these days, I'm working on advising startup founders. That's been my passion project for the past year almost, and it's really focused on 3 things. So how do you actually build a very quick form of your product using validation and prototyping? So that's very much reliant on innovation techniques. Second, how do you go to market with it when it's ready and get your first few clients? And then finally, how do you do your first fundraise? So really like focusing on early stage startups, early stage founders, and helping them on these 3 major milestones that hopefully will get you to build a really successful business.
Wow, I mean, that really is across the board, like sort of pillar to post. You bring us an idea and we'll tell you how to turn it into a business, basically.
Almost, yeah. I feel like because this is what I had as an experience. So before this advisory, I launched my own startup as a founder, and I went through these, and I started seeing how do we actually turn that into a process that other people can go through and learn from it. So how do you build in a systematized way that makes sense? How do you go to market in a fast way that brings customers? And how do you kind of ace your fundraise? And so now, actually, the funny story is what ended up happening is when I was working on my startup, I used to connect with other founders and they would ask me questions about these topics and I would give them advice. And so now I was like, why don't I just commercialize this into an actual company that makes money? But I actually work on like proper engagement for a long-term piece. And that's how the advisory kind of whole piece came about.
So does it work sort of like almost departmentally, where you've sort of got one person who's saying like working on the idea, another person who's working on the marketing, and it sort of goes through the teams? Or is it this sort of singular cohesive thing? Because it's don't take this the wrong way, entirely positively, but in a very sort of jack of all trades kind of a business.
Yeah, it's a generalist approach for early stage founders for sure. We try to focus on one big challenge at a time, although you are working on everything all the time as a founder. But in terms of our involvement, like predominantly, if the concept is validation and building, then let's just work on this. And then there could be associated tracks around other things, but we just want to make sure we get to a milestone fast. So what I'm hoping is like, okay, let's just like boost one certain thing, do it really well, get to where we need to be, and then we move on to the next stage.
That makes sense. And obviously, from the way you sort of described it in those sections, you can see the order of things. But from what you just said there, it's going to be extremely iterative as well. There's going to be a period of trying an idea, then marketing it and going, actually, our market research tells us this. And that. How do you structure that and make sense of it in a way that fits into a plan? And how do you prioritize what goes where?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, actually. The main thing that we can think about here is there's elements that you pick up as skills and there's a milestone you hit, but then eventually you keep moving forward. So for example, let's assume, Dan, you're launching a business, whatever it is. And so we would work with you to just make sure we do validation on it's kind of a setup of things that make sense for you, but we also teach you the skills of how do you keep working on your product. So the elements that would make a great product is really understanding your audience well, really defining the problem you're fixing for them, coming up with your solution and testing it fast. And so these are skills that you acquire as a founder. And then you keep refining this with every interaction with the real world. So once you launch your first milestone, for example, and your product is out. So let's assume this podcast is your product, right? And so you put this product out and you see the feedback. Do we get traction or not? And based off of this, you go back to kind of this set of tools that you have. It's like, okay, if it worked out well, is it because like it's the right audience or the right topic or the right comment like setup, or do I need to kind of rethink it and go back to the drawing board? And so that's how we kind of make sure that iteration piece is part of how we work with founders. But it's super important to work towards a core milestone that can be done, successively, or else again you can drown in work. There's so much to do that it's a bit too complex. So again, how do I go to market and get my first 10 customers? Then from these 10 customers, you learn a ton of things. And you adjust, obviously. You adjust your go-to-market approach, your positioning, your messaging, your pricing, etc. So the way, just to keep it short, I guess, because I'm rambling a bit, but the two.
That's what we're here for. This is literally a show about please ramble.
You should call it like founder rambles, by the way. That could be a really funny, yeah. Could be a really, because one thing you'll learn, I don't necessarily put the founder hat right now, but one thing you will learn working with founders is they talk a lot, man. They have so much to talk about when they talk about their businesses. It's a bit complicated.
Good. That's passion. It comes from a place of actually caring about what they do. What if your customer support worked 24/7, spoke multiple languages, and never needed a coffee break? Let's face it, legacy platforms are slow, expensive, and make scaling painful. Long wait times, repetitive questions, burnt-out teams. Sound familiar? Say hello to Mando AI, your smart customer support and sales assistant, built to help startups and growing businesses do more with less. With Mando, you can launch an AI customer service agent in just 2 minutes with no tech headaches. Let AI handle 60% of your sales and support queries. Escalate complex issues to your team instantly with full context, and get real-time insights to improve your support game. Businesses using Mando cut support costs by 35% and boost satisfaction by 42% without hiring more agents. Visit mando.cx and use the code FoundersVoice to get your first 3 months free. That's mando.cx, code FoundersVoice, all one word, for 3 months on us. Let AI handle support so your team can focus on what matters with Mando AI.
Absolutely.
And I wish there were more people in the business world that really cared about what they do as opposed to the profits from what they do.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, so sorry, just to keep it short. So building the right skills, like we teach you skills that make sense for you. We work towards a core milestone, and then you just keep redoing the process with the skills that you've picked up and adjusting and iterating until, there's no final point, but you're just progressing through the journey.
Yeah, I mean, there cannot be a final point. The world moves, the world changes, and you have to adapt to that. If you think you've reached an endpoint, you've just given up. Surely. Yeah.
You're never there, basically, which is what some people try to pretend.
Yeah. But
yeah.
I appreciate you may not be able to actually mention any names or any clients or anything, but if you could think of a particular case study that you've worked on, a particular success story, and talk, or even a failure or something just interesting. If there's a particular story from your business, I'd love to hear it.
So I could tell you about my startup that I've launched for sure. I have a lot of kind of interesting milestones from this one. So my previous startup was a media and technology startup in the Arabic world. It was such an amazing journey trying to build a platform. The idea was to build kind of a Reddit/Medium equivalent for the Arabic speaking world. And we hit 1 million active users a month, fully organic. So this is one of the things I'm most proud about. And we had people from everywhere across the Middle East and the North African kind of area. So from Morocco to Oman to Saudi Arabia, it was really like such a beautiful moment of bringing people together around shared interest and topics, because there was a lot of forums, a lot of communities, so people really loved that. And that experience really defined a lot of things for me as a person, and also taught me these tools that basically now I'm trying to help other founders pick up and work on as well.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So that said, what do you think what would you say the biggest mistakes that an average founder tends to make then? Because I'm guessing between your consultation, where you've seen a lot of them, and setting up, 4 startups, you must have seen a few, right?
No, for sure. Honestly, there's a few mistakes that keep repeating, and it's very much, you would also, like, I would also do them if I was working on my business. The good thing is sometimes as an advisor, you can tell people what to do. And then suddenly, if you're doing the thing, you're making the exact same mistakes that you're preventing, like warning people about. The first one is just assuming you understand what the problem and the audience is. This is a huge issue that too many founders fall into. Like you, Dan, with your podcast, like, I know what people want to listen to. I'm just going to build this thing that I'm super excited about and bring the guests that I care about. And you skip the step of like, who's my audience? What do I have a defined view of who they are and what their needs are? And then I build kind of my product around them or my solution around them. So that's a huge mistake most people fall into. I actually had a customer or a founder that we worked with about 4 months ago, which was so difficult or rigid around this idea of let's talk to your audience first. They came in immediately like, we know what we need to do. I'm like, please, can we just spend, a couple of days defining who we want to serve in a sense or build for, and just go talk to them. And eventually, when they eventually did, they actually sent me a text that I'm super proud of. And it was like, this was a humbling moment. Like these moments we talked to the audience was such a humbling moment, because they realize that, wait, like we're completely off track compared to what people need or what we thought they needed. So that's honestly that's a core problem that might not seem the biggest, but you will not notice it early on. And then 2 years later or a year later, you're like, oh no, this was a huge issue and we've built in the wrong direction completely.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Making sure you don't do that at the beginning will reap a lot of rewards throughout the process.
Yeah, I've worked in a number of marketing departments over the years. I spent a lot of time being a content creator in the early days of content creation, and it was just it's really interesting to see, particularly with small startups, in fact, that because they've got a pet idea that they would like to see, they're less they're so busy thinking about, this is the thing I want to make. They're not thinking about, is this a thing that has an audience, and
100%.
Am I making it for the audience or am I making it for me? The most interesting one, and I won't say who it was, but I was working for one company where you may have experienced this yourself, and I think a lot of people who are in the technology space will this will resonate with them. When you're brought into a company to do one vaguely technology job, like in my case, content creation. Well, if that's the case, I guess you build websites, don't you? You're now building the website for the entire company because, I don't know, it's better than paying someone else. And I was tasked with building the website for the company, and every day I'd get from the boss a list of, oh, I've seen this. I'd really like it if it could do this. Oh, wouldn't it be great if it did that? And we should also have one of these and this feature. And it should also be fully social and fully integrated. And like, okay. Yeah. First of all, slow down. You haven't got the budget or the time for all these things. But more importantly, is this because you think it'll help your audience, or is it just something you've seen and you'd like?
Yeah.
And I think so many startups suffer from the problem of, well, I think this would be a cool thing to do and it looks like fun. So, if I think it's fun, surely other people would.
100%. I think that idea of validation and also prioritization is crucial at those beginning days of a founder.
Yes.
So making sure people need this is huge. And then they need a lot of things. So what are like the 1 to 3 things I'm going to focus on that will actually have impact? Because otherwise you'll be in a space that there's so much to do and it's way too complicated to manage. And that's it. But again, because I think what you mentioned is kind of a double-edged sword, which is the passion element. I'm so passionate, which is great, but I'm also so passionate that I get lost in the passion and the excitement, and I kind of forget about, keeping my feet on the ground, which is a whole other problem.
Yeah, we absolutely. There's sort of, people don't think about businesses as needing sort of 2 passions. That is, for the thing that the business does, and running a business. These are two
Yeah.
totally separate things. It's a bit like in the more standard corporate world where you're working for another company. The concept that if you're really good at a particular job, and this is particularly problematic in sort of creative fields, you're
Yeah.
really good at doing a job. So inevitably, well, you must be good at managing people doing that job.
Yeah.
Which generally just makes for really frustrated managers who wish they were still doing the thing that they got into this industry for. And in the meantime, not being very good at managing people because they've never been trained in it and just be told, well, you're good at that job, so get on with it.
100%. It's tricky. It's tricky. And I mean, I think as a founder or in the startup world, you're going to be challenged in every way around this because you're on your own and you're doing everything. So your shortcomings or your gaps or blind spots are going to be exposed very clearly to you. So you either kind of wallow in your pain or you have to figure out how to address these and try to learn or improve, or else you won't move forward.
No. Absolutely. But let's do a quick pivot because obviously time is going to be relatively limited as these things are. So I want to go right back to the beginning and find out a little bit more about you and your story and what got you to be the kind of person you are now doing what you're doing today. Generally, there are very few children, and as admittedly in the current era might have changed, but certainly for me growing up, there are very few children who said, I want to be a businessman or an entrepreneur, and not just because they couldn't say entrepreneur. So what did you want to do as a kid? Yeah, exactly. But what happened? What did you originally want to do, and how did you end up sort of going down this route of sort of ultimate business person?
Yeah. I wouldn't describe myself as ultimate business person, but I love the title. It sounds like a superhero almost.
You can have that one for free.
Yeah. So actually, I was talking to a friend about this yesterday, which we were talking about what we wanted to be as kids. And as a kid, I actually wanted to be an animator. I had seen
Me too. Oh my God,
way,
me too.
Man, that's awesome. Yeah. Wait, let's see if we have the same origin story, because I saw a documentary about Disney animators and how they did prepare for those movies, and like the flip book technique where they show they draw all the things and then they flip and it moves, and it blew my mind as an 8-year-old. I'm like, I want to do this. This is what my life should like. And then maybe a year later, I quickly realized I have zero drawing skills or artistic ability, and I completely dropped that that ambition, because in my class, people at that time were football player or astronaut in certain extensive, but football player was the main thing that everyone. I'm like, I want to do cartoons, and so that didn't work out. And I eventually went into kind of a business track, and I started my life in the corporate space. So I did consulting, and I worked for Google for a really long time, 10 years. And within that, I started working with companies, but I also started focusing on this idea of innovation, which is kind of very integral to what we do at Ruya today within my advisory. And so I started focusing on that topic, on how do you bring creative innovation to life, or how do you bring creative, creative ideation or creative solutions to big challenges. And I started working with Google partners on this, which is you have a big product launch, how do you do it creatively, or you're rebranding, or you have a major initiative that you want to deploy. And I loved it. It was amazing. And eventually my role became a lot of doing that. And so basically innovation as a process, it's very complex to bring to life because it needs a lot of fine tuning, but the process is quite straightforward. It's basically, again, who is this audience that I'm looking for? I need to really well define it, and I need to extract a really good problem out of them. 2 is I need to come up with my solution to address that problem. And the solution has to be different or maybe transformative compared to what exists out there today. And then 3, I need to test it around fast to validate that I'm on the right direction, and then iterate forward until I get to a good business. And so that's basically the startup process in a sense.
This episode is brought to you by AraGeek Studio. So you're a startup spending big on performance campaigns, juggling content that doesn't convert, and still missing a solid digital growth strategy. And to make it worse, most agencies in MENA charge a fortune and treat you just like another client. But here's the good news. Our sister company and sponsor AraGeek Studio does things differently. They treat you like a partner, not just another project, fully aligned with your goals, your customers, and your growth. They've been in the game for 14 years, run by the same people behind AraGeek.com, and they've delivered fantastic results for companies like Labia, Cura, Mali, and even Google. Let AraGeek Studios experts help you cut down your burn rate and bring customers with smart, scalable growth marketing strategies that actually work. Just head to studio.arageek.com/founder and book your free consultancy session. Again, that's studio.arageek.com/founder to book your free consultancy session today. AraGeek Studio, smart growth marketing built for startups in the MENA region.
And so eventually I was like, fine, I'm just going to quit corporate and I want a new challenge and I'm going to go into the startup space. And it's been 4 years and it's been the best 4 years I've ever had, honestly, from a professional perspective.
Amazing. What was I just writing down? Oh, yeah, I was looking at, sorry, I won't say distracted. I was focusing on the working at Google side of thing because you hear so many stories about both positive and negative about what it means to work at Google. But it's certainly, in fact, I'm going to throw this one in, which was not what I expected to be asking today. But the infamous Google interview.
Yeah.
Is that what you went through? Is it true? Is it a real thing?
I actually had a good recruitment process.
Okay, intriguing.
Yeah. It depends on what do you mean by infamous.
They ask these like crazy questions that seem to make absolutely no sense. Like,
oh, okay, yeah, I did get these questions.
I don't know, you're in a hot air balloon, and how do you survive or something?
Yeah. So, but to be fair, like coming from consulting, this is what I got in terms of questions for interviewing and within work. So that wasn't very complex, but I did get like, how much do I need to sell my guitar to be able to make $1 million or something like this online? And then you have to do like a lot of complicated math to be able to do it. But it was overall a very good process, I have to say, like, it's because I had ended up interviewing as well in my time at Google, and there's a lot of training on like how do you bring in, interviewees in the right way, give them a good experience regardless of the outcome. But there are a few things we look for. And the standard is just high because the pipeline is really big. Like any posting you have at Google, you have like hundreds to thousands of people applying. So you can take your pick, right? Like you can almost, I don't want to say this much. Like, honestly, I don't want to say this too much, like too intensely, but you could hire an MBA to like pick up the phones for you. That's like it, because the brand is so strong and like people love being associated with it, they would apply to anything. And so you have your pick of the litter, honestly. Like, who do I want to be part of this group? And so, yeah, the standards were very hard to actually bring people in.
I can imagine. I mean, it's literally the most desired like tech post still to this day.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's move back to today. Now that we've talked about Google for a bit and your current business. I was looking for another word there, but no, business.
Venture,
so working with
advisory.
other clients. Yeah. How do you then go from just, I presume you get companies right at the start of their journey who are not much more than, we've had this idea and we're sure it's got legs. How do you manage to take that and actually develop it into an entirely sort of validated product in a way that isn't just throwing all their money at the problem and hoping a solution falls out the bottom?
I love your question, Dan. That's such an essential question that unfortunately not a lot of founders ask about. I will have to specify one thing though, is we don't necessarily just start at the immediate idea state. Like you can have a business running and then we come and we talk more about your go-to marketing or your pivots. You can be looking for a fundraise and we start working with you there. So it's not necessarily like you either start from day zero with us or we won't be able to work together.
So I didn't mean to assume that. That wasn't what I was thinking.
Yeah. No, because it makes it very complex in terms of how do we actually manage that portfolio of projects all evolving at the same time at around the same paces. So it's a bit more complicated. But yeah, so the main thing again is this idea of validation, because the main misconception that we all have unconsciously is that we build something and then we put it in front of people and then we see what they think about this. And building something can take months to years. I've seen founders that have spent a year working on something without just stress testing it in the outside world. And so imagine yourself, you're this founder, you've been working for a year nonstop, like hallucinating about this product because you think about it at night, during the day, you just do everything to bring this to life. You get into that world of the founder you mentioned, like, oh, we should add this thing and add that thing, and I saw this thing and this feature is amazing. And then you put it in front of a user and they don't know how to use it, for example, or they don't find it really impressive. It breaks you inside as a person, one, emotionally, but two, you've wasted a year of resources, time, and money on this. So that's where this idea of validation comes very early on and is super important. I need to make sure before I overinvest in my solution or my direction that people want this product, or they want this solution, or they want this service. And there's a lot of ways to do what we call fast validation or prototyping or pretotyping, whatever term you want to call it, to be able to get some signals from the market or from the audience itself that like this is a good solution for me. And right now, like this has become so easy with, you know, all these no-code tools where you put a small prompt and a website comes up, or like a fake app comes up. And you can do this as easy ways to just be able to test the waters, get an understanding. Do people want this? Are they excited about it? Is it a good solution for them? And once I have enough of that validation, then I go into the building stage where I start actually developing the product in cycles until it becomes a mature product that can be launched.
I'm so just one thing you said there has me very intrigued, because it's a phrase that I've seen popping up all over the place lately, and it might send shivers down your spine when I say it. Vibe coding.
Yeah.
And I suspect you've probably had come under issues with this in your line of work, where people are like, oh, we've got this amazing idea, we've thrown it into AI, we just vibe code the whole thing, and we're never going to have any problems because we'll just get a guy to go, computer, fix this.
Yeah, 100%. And, we're in hype stage now. So there's always something in hype that people are talking about. And during the hype stage, people sell you everything. And it's just frustrating that so many people necessarily... I'm not saying vibe coding doesn't work. Let me just preface this before I go on my ramble or my rant, which is there is value to that. But yeah, there is value to that. Yeah, thanks. You could take a 5-minute here, Dan. I'll be back.
That would be lovely.
Yeah. No, so basically, there's always something being hyped. You know, we had the whole NFT bubble. We had the whole thing. Like, you can just track every season what's the big topic that everyone's obsessed about and coming to talk to you about as if it's the next big killer, you know? And so, yes, there are tools now that can build really good solutions for you. That's a fact. You can, as a non-coder, be able to develop products. That's also another fact. What is the quality of those products? How much do you actually need to like prompt properly to be able to do it? How much extra manual work do you need to do on top to actually do a finished, polished product? It's still very big. It's not like what we're selling you. Like, you know what? I'm gonna put a few sentences into ChatGPT, and then I have a food tracking app, or I have the next AI whatever thing. That's not true. You can do like proxies. You can do nice products, but you will eventually need either a lot of prompting or inputs to get it to a good level, or you will need to start inputting manually or redoing certain things for it to be like a fully functional product. That being said, what's great about the... Sorry, I did say I need 5 minutes, but it's just because it's a topic that's...
Please carry on. Sorry.
Yeah. So that being said, I'm not saying vibe coding doesn't work. It works amazingly well to do prototyping and testing. You can do early versions of the product super well, and then eventually graduate it into something that's a bit of a more mature build. But not yet, at least. The whole dream of like, you know, I press a button and I make $1 billion with an app that overnight just got coded while I was sleeping. Like that's very frustrating as a message to bring to the market and for people to fall for, honestly.
Oh yeah. See, I didn't need to interrupt. That was exactly what I was going to mention. So yeah, I feel like the problem we've got, as is often the case with these kinds of time-saving mediums, is they're great for people who already know what they're doing to help them save time and get things started. Exactly what you were saying about prototyping. I would have loved to have the kind of systems that we have now, like 2-3 years ago. God, 4 years ago now I think about it, when I was working on prototyping a music app for a radio station.
Nice.
And I don't know anything about coding, but I knew a bit about like UI and UX and stuff like that, enough that I could start to bodge something together with a couple of off-the-shelf white label systems. But nowadays it would have been like, if I was doing that today, it would have been so easy to put together a prototype and they could go, oh, right, that's what you want. Brilliant. Let's hire someone who actually knows what they're doing. The thing that, as you were talking, that I noted here was if you don't know the subject, you can't validate it.
Yeah.
So if you don't know how to code, you can be great at vibe coding, except until it goes wrong and you have no idea why and you can't fix it. And even when it is fixed, you don't know if it's actually fixed. You just know
100%.
that it looks like it's been fixed.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we do have to caveat this, that this is the current situation now. Obviously, like every week something is happening that's changing, our minds are being blown every week. Again, this is the hype. Like every week we're reaching new heights of whatever. So at some point we might get to a level where, you know what, you can, with a few basic prompts, come up with an excellent product. This is great, but this is also a problem that a lot of people don't talk about, which is just, Dan, you came up with this amazing app. Great. I'm going to write a few lines to my prompt and then replicate it and compete with you. So how do you build a sustainable business out of this? If what you're doing is just, putting a few lines of prompting into something that builds a product for you. So that's going to be a whole other challenge for people wanting to start a business once we get to that level of where everything is replicable so easily.
I think we can safely say that the most sustainable business then over the next few years will without a doubt be IP lawyers.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, or creators. I'm betting big on creators, Dan. So you're in the right space, 100%. And I'm trying to build my space there as well.
Absolutely. Anyone that. So this is something, weirdly enough, I do DJing for fun on the side, just like on Twitch and stuff. But one of the things that comes up in a lot of these forums and discussions is like old vinyl players getting really angry at modern DJs and modern controllers and just, oh, you're pressing all your buttons, you're not doing anything real. Learn how to do it properly. Go. And it just feels like we're in the same position in the creator space with AI tools. One thing I've said since the beginning of digital DJing: creatives do what they do because they like being creative. So if you give them a tool that makes it easier for them to take their brain off of one thing and then apply it to another, they won't use that to be lazy. They'll use that to be more creative. So instead of the classic one is there's a button on controllers that matches the tempo. So you don't have to think. You just press the button and the first song plays in time with the second song. So the second song plays it up with the first song, and you don't have to think. It just locks it for you. And people are going, see, DJs are just lazy. That was all the work back in the day, to which I would now argue, and now my brain is free to do 1,000,001 other different things. I can work on sound effects. I can work on playing another tune on top of that. I can work on loops. I can do all kinds of stuff. And I can give you a better show. And therefore, from the point of view of a startup, I can give you a better product. Because these things have all been taken off my plate, and we sort of moved the thinking of those onto a computer platform.
Yeah, that's the best case scenario that happened. That technology will push the level, the quality, the services, or whatever output is to a much higher level. Let's see. Again, we're in a very mixed space. And as ultimate businessman, like the DJ thing is too cool for me. So I don't understand. Like it's too remote for me as superhero, whatever. What was
for me it's been side by side. Anyway, we could go on about this far too long, and we've already been going pretty much our allotted time and then some. So before we just wind things up, first of all, again, thank you so much for coming and joining us today. But before we go down that line, last chance, if you want to tell people exactly how they can find out more about you, about your business, now is your free platform to plug away.
Thanks, man. That's awesome. So you can find out about me. My main platform right now is LinkedIn, where I try to publish content around thought leadership for how do you, again, build, go to market, fundraise. You can learn a lot and pick up a lot of free things, honestly. I've seen a lot of people just send me pictures of my posts that they've printed and hung on their walls. So there is value there for you. You'll have a lot of nice visuals and infographics to steal. And then if you'd like to work with us, please reach out to me on LinkedIn or find us on our site, and we'll hopefully see how we can work together. And my ambition, Dan, as you can just say here, like I want in this year, not sure how I'm going to do it yet, but I want to help over 100 different founders. This is people launching their businesses. So I need to see how I can get to that number. So hopefully we'll be able to figure out a cool way, maybe using AI, I don't know, to get to that. But yeah, I've set a really big stretch target for me in terms of how much can we support people in getting their businesses off the ground. That would be amazing for me.
Amazing. Well, I wish you the very best of luck with hitting that target. I think anyone who wants to add to that, or rather knock down that 100 number by a few points, by all means do get in touch.
Few notches, yeah.
That's the word I was looking for. Thank you.
Yeah.
And if I'm forgetting words, it's probably a good time to wrap up. So again, Majd, thank you so much for being with us on the show today. Again, to all our viewers, thank you so much. And listeners, of course, this is a podcast. Thank you so much for listening. I've been Dan from AraGeek.com. We will see you on the very next episode of Founder's Voice. And with that, have a great one. Take care and see you next time.
Bye, everyone.
And we're out. Not my most
Dan.
solid of ending, but it'll do. Now, there's the stop button.